Okay, hi everyone. In this video, I'll be going through how do we apply the quadratic formula to solve quadratic equations. Okay, so if you recall what is quadratic equations, it just means that I have an equation here, for example, this thing over here, whereby your x power is, the highest power is 2. This is what we call a quadratic equation. Okay, so if we look at the first part of this worksheet over here, in worksheet 1, we learn how to solve quadratic equations by factorization. So if you recall the zero product rule, something times something equals to 0 means that either A is equal to 0 or B is equal to 0. Then in worksheet 2, we learn how to solve quadratic equations by completing the square. So these are what we have covered to solve quadratic equations. And so actually you realize that the fastest way to solve quadratic equations actually is this new thing we are going to do in this worksheet, which is called the quadratic formula. Okay, I won't go through this part for now first, how do we get the quadratic formula, but essentially what the quadratic formula is that if I have a quadratic equation like this, whereby your right hand side, this is very important, the right hand side is equal to 0, and this a, b, c here, ax squared plus bx plus c, these are numbers. So I have a number x squared, a number times x squared plus another number times x times plus another number here. Then I can find the solutions for x using this formula over here. Okay, so let's learn how to apply the quadratic formula. But a very important thing you must remember is that the right hand side of the quadratic equation must be equals to 0 first, then you can apply the quadratic formula. Okay, so now let's look at page 2. Okay, so the first step to apply the quadratic formula first is to identify your a, b, and c. So if we will look at this quadratic equation over here, any quadratic equation can be expressed in this form: ax squared plus bx plus c, whereby your a, b, and c are just numbers. So first step is must know how to identify your a, b, and c first. So let's look at part A. Part A here, I have 9x squared plus 12x plus 4. So over here, if I were to compare, your A is your coefficient of x squared, which is, in this case here, 9. So over here, A is equal to 9. And B is your coefficient of x, which is, in this case here, 12. Okay, 12. And C is your coefficient of, it's your constant term over here, which in this case, it's 4. So very simply for part A is C is equal to 4. Okay, let's look at part B now. Part B now, I have 2x squared plus 5x minus 1. So very simply, your A is equal to 2. Your coefficient of x squared is 2. Your B is now 5. Okay, positive 5. And now you look at your C, right? This C here, there's a minus 1 here. So this C actually encompasses your sign, this sign over here. All your numbers here includes the sign, whether your number is positive or negative. So in this case over here, your C is the entire negative 1. So this is negative 1. Okay, let's look at part C now. Same thing. A is simply, even though there's no number here, but this is actually an invisible 1x squared. Okay, so actually over here, your A is equal to 1. Okay, note now this is an invisible 1, not 0, because 0 times x squared will become 0. So this is an invisible 1x squared minus 7x. So remember now your B here includes the sign. In this case over here, this is negative 7. And then for this part over here, this is positive 8. So your C is 8. Okay. Okay, so now let's look at part D now. Part D over here, negative x squared plus x plus 3. Same thing, we identify your A here. Remember, it encompasses the sign here. This is actually an invisible 1. So this is negative 1x squared plus 1x plus 3. Okay, so over here, your A is equal to this number over here, which is negative, not just negative, but negative 1. Okay. And over here, your B is this number here, which is a plus, an invisible positive 1. So over here, B is equal to 1. And your C is equal to positive 3. Okay. Now let's look at part E. You can simply identify over here your x squared, your coefficient of x squared is negative half. So you write A to be negative half. Okay. B is this number over here including the sign. This is negative 0.8, negative 0.8. And C is your constant term over here, the term which doesn't have any x multiplied to it. So in this case here, your C is negative pi. Okay, so quite simple examples. Okay, so now let's look at part F now. Okay, so always remember, right, ax squared, your a always refers to your coefficient of x squared, meaning your first term must be a x squared over here. So if we look at part F, over here my first term is not x squared but x. So what I should do is, first step, rewrite it such that I have x squared term, a x squared term plus a x term plus your constant here. Okay, this is your ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. Okay, so if we were to rewrite this, I'll get 5x squared plus 2x minus 1 equals to 0. Okay, we follow this equation here. I rewrite to become this. Then now by comparison, I think you can easily see that your a is 5, your b is 2, and your c is negative 1. Okay? Okay, great. So always remember, for quadratic equation, first your right hand side must make sure that it's equal to 0. So let's look at part G over here. Now the right hand side of the equation is negative 3x. So in order to make the right hand side equal to 0, I must get rid of this negative 3x. So I'll add 3x on both sides. This will become x squared plus 3x equals to 0. Okay? Then now we can compare. If we were to compare with what you need to compare with, which is ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. By comparison, you can see that your a is this number here, which is an invisible 1. Okay, this is a 1. 1. Okay, your b here is simply equals to 3. Okay, and your c, in this case over here, this equation here, there is no c here. So therefore, it means that your c here is equal to 0. Okay, and this is for part G. Okay, part H is something similar. You can try by yourself first. First step, make the right side equals to 0. Over here, I have a 5. In order to get rid of the 5, I must subtract 5 from both sides of the equation. So therefore, if I were to rewrite this, I will get x squared minus 5 equals to 0. So therefore, if I were to compare with ax squared plus bx plus c, okay, so note very carefully, over here, your a is your coefficient of x squared, your b is your coefficient of x, and c is your constant term here. In this expression here, x squared minus 5, I do not have a term with x. So which means that my a here is an invisible 1. Okay, 1. And your b, because there is no term with x in this expression here, which means that your b is equal to 0. Okay, b is equal to 0. And c is your constant term here, which is in this case, I have a negative 5. Okay, so by comparison, c is equal to negative 5. Okay, now let's look at the last part here, part I. Okay, let's look at this equation here. I have this 1 minus x squared on the right side. So my first step is to simply, remember you have to make sure your right side is equal to 0 first. So I have to get rid of 1 minus x squared by subtracting this from both sides. So therefore I will get, so I were to subtract this away and get it to the left side over here. Okay, and rewrite this in terms of x squared plus x plus c. Okay, so over here I will get x squared. Over here I have a positive 7x, so this is plus 7x. Then I subtract 1 from both sides. Our minus 1 equals to 0. Okay, and therefore by comparison, I think you can see that my a here is an invisible 1. My a, this is my a. My b is a positive 7. And your c here is negative 1. Okay, negative 1. Okay, and there we go. This is the solutions to identify a, b, and c in a quadratic equation. So now let's learn how to apply the formula. Okay, so previously we saw that this is the formula here. Let me screenshot this. Okay, so let me see. Okay. So let me bring down the formula so that we can see this easily before we answer the question. Okay, this part here, solve this equation. Okay, So now let me put the formula here so that we can all see what is the formula. Okay. So given that the formula I put it over here, okay, my first step, okay, I have this quadratic equation. Let me write it down again so that's clearer. X squared minus 48x plus 100 equals to 0. First step, check. Is the right side equals to 0? Currently, yes, it is equal to 0 already. So this is check. I can put a tick to make sure that this is over here, right? RHS, right hand side is equal to 0. Once I've ensured that, my next step is to identify your A, B, and C. So let's look at from here, let's identify your A, B, and C. Okay, A is your coefficient of x squared, which is this number here, which is an invisible 1. B is your coefficient of x. In this case, remember it includes the sign. So this is negative 48. And your C is your number here. In this case, it is 100. Okay, so now let's apply the quadratic formula. Okay, let me bring the formula down now. Okay, this is my quadratic formula here. So if I were to apply this formula here, I know that, therefore, x is simply equals to negative b. So in this case, it's negative bracket negative 48. Very important, this is negative of b. So negative of b, my b in this case is negative 48, so I must put a bracket very clearly. Okay, then plus minus square root. Okay, then now I have b squared minus 4ac, so I key this in. My b is negative 48, the whole thing square, minus 4ac. My a is 1, my c is 100. Then the whole thing divided by 2a. Okay, so the whole thing divided by 2a, my a is 1. Okay, so you can key this in your calculator, or you can use our calculator shortcut to calculate how to solve quadratic equations. Okay, you should have two answers. All quadratic equations usually will have two answers. Okay, in this case here, if you key this correctly into your calculator, the question say, give your answer correct to 2 decimal places. So you can cross-check with your calculator. Key this in, try by yourself first. Okay, the answer that you should get should be two answers. X should be equals to 45.82, or x is equal to 2.18, all correct to 2 decimal places. Okay, and this is for example 1. Okay. Okay, let's look at example 2 now. Example 2, now it is an interesting question. This is from 2006 TOS, one of the national exams questions. Okay, now instead of x, I have a a. Does anything change? So actually, quadratic formula here, usually we see your answers in terms of x squared plus whatever x. But now it becomes a. So actually, nothing changes, only that this letter here instead of x, it becomes an a. But you must also need to identify your a, b, and c correctly. Okay, so over here, since I use a already over here, I call the coefficient of your a square here a1 lah. So that is a bit different, okay? So let's write this down first. 7a squared plus 12a minus 11 equals to 0. First step, we check, is the right side equals to 0? We look at this part here. Yes, this is equal to 0. So I can now, I can now put a tick here to know that I have checked this. The right hand side is equal to 0. Okay, next step, identify your A, B, and C. Okay, A, B, and C. But since this equation here uses A already, maybe we call this A1 instead, so that we differentiate this A from this A. Okay, so now remember your A1 here is your coefficient of your A square, which is in this case it's 7. B is your coefficient of A, which is 12. C is your coefficient of, is the constant term here, which is negative 11. Okay, so therefore if we were to apply the formula again, okay, let me copy, put it down here. Okay, so now by the quadratic formula, instead of x here, I will have a. a is simply equals to negative b, so it's negative. My b is 12. So this 12 here, I put it down here. Negative 12 plus minus square root. Next part, b square minus 4ac. So my b square here is 12 square minus 4. My a is 7. My c is negative 11. So this is 4 times 7 times negative 11. The whole thing divided by 2a. So my, 2a means 2 times my a1, which is 7. Okay, so we key this in your calculator. Question says correct, give your answers to 2dp. So you press this in your calculator, you should have two different answers. One answer will be 0.66, a equals to 0.66, or a equals to negative 2.38 to 2dp. Okay, and this is your answer for example 2. Okay. Okay, if you can follow, let's look at example 3 now. Can you try by yourself first before you continue with this video? Very simple. First, the steps are the same throughout. So over here, you can pause the video to try yourself first. Then once done, you can come back to this. Okay, I'll continue first. So over here, I will write out the equation first. 3x squared minus 4x minus 253 equals to 0. Okay, so first step, we check. Is the right side equals to 0? Yes, it is. So over here, I can put a tick. RHS is equal to 0. Okay, next step, once I've done this checking, my next step is to identify your A, B, and C. So always remember how to find your A. A is your coefficient of x squared, which is 3. B is this number here, multiplied to x, which is, remember, includes the sign, negative 4. And C is your constant term, remember, includes the sign as well. So this entire number here, which is negative 253. Okay, so if we were to recall your quadratic formula, okay, once you have a quadratic equation like this, right hand side is equal to 0, you can now apply the quadratic formula here. So therefore, x is simply equals to, remember, negative b, so negative, then bracket negative 4 plus minus square root. Then you must write out over here, negative 4 square minus 4 AC. My A is 3, my C is negative 253. A times negative 253. Remember, your square root has to cover everything. Over 2 times 3. Therefore, you can press this into your calculator. You should have two answers. X should be equals to 9.87 or x equals to negative 8.54. Okay, I need to highlight this. Let's say you found a shortcut in your calculator to get from this step here to this step. Can I skip this step over here? Answer is no. Okay, this is an important key step, writing out the quadratic formula to know that you have applied the quadratic formula. So we must see this step. Okay. If you miss out this step, you will not get your marks. So please make sure in your presentation you include this step. If you do not have this step here, I'll make you redo this part to include this step. Okay? So make sure that you see this, very important, of how you are applying the quadratic formula here to solve the question. Okay? Okay, this is for example 3. Now let's look at example 4. Example 4 is two parts. Very simple. You can first check first. You note that the right hand side is not 0. So that means you must first expand and simplify such that the right side is equal to 0. So let's look at example 4a. Okay, example 4a over here. Quadratic, to solve this equation first, I note that the right side is not equal to 0. So my first step is to expand out everything first. X minus 1 square is simply, this is simply x minus 1 times x minus 1 equals to 4x minus 5. Okay, so therefore to expand this, remember your rainbow method. Okay, x times x plus x times negative 1 plus negative x plus negative 1 times negative 1. So I'll get x squared. X times negative 1 is x minus x, then minus x plus 1 equals to 4x minus 5. Okay. Then now to simplify, I'll get x squared minus x is minus 2x plus 1 equals to 4x minus 5. Then now I want to make the right side equals to 0, which means that I want to get rid of 4x and negative 5. To get rid of 4x means I must subtract 4x from both sides. So this will become x squared minus 2x plus 1 minus 4x plus 5 equals to 0. Okay. Then once I've reached this step over here, then now I can simplify this quadratic expression on the left side. I will get x squared. Now we identify the like terms. Negative 2x minus 4x minus 2 minus 4, I will get minus 6x. Then over here I have 1 plus 5, I'll get plus 6 equals to 0. Okay. Then now that I have a quadratic expression, now you can put a tick whereby right hand side here is equal to 0. Okay. So now once I've done that, next step to solve this quadratic equation, I will now apply the quadratic formula. So I'll apply the quadratic formula as such. X equals to before that, sorry, we must first identify your A, B, and C first. So A is equal to, B equals to, C equals to. Then you look at your quadratic expression here. Identify what is your A, B, and C. So over here, if you can see, my A is equal to 1. My B is equal to negative 6. And my C in this case is equal to 6. Okay, so therefore, now to apply the quadratic formula, now I want to apply the quadratic formula here. Therefore, x is equal to negative b. So over here, negative 6 plus minus square root. Then from here, negative 6 squared minus 4. A is 1, C is 6. Okay. The whole thing divided by 2 times A, which is 1. Okay. Then now once I've done that, I can now key this into your calculator to evaluate out the answers. Note that for questions like this, if the question never specify the degree of accuracy, we usually leave your answers to 3SF. Okay. 3SF for your answers, because question never specify. Okay. So over here, if you were to press this in your calculator, you'll get x equals to 4.73 or x equals to 1.27, round off to 3SF. Okay, this is for example 4a. Remember, this step must be seen in order to score the full marks for the question. Alright, okay, let's look at the last example now. Example 4b, very simple. We first check, I want to solve this quadratic equation, but the right side is not 0. So first step, expand out the left side first, then get rid of the terms on the right side, and to make the right side equals to 0, then you can solve by the quadratic formula. Okay, so now let's try. Over here, by expansion first, okay, we know that by expansion, x times x plus x times negative 1. So over here is x squared, then minus x. Then over here, 3 times x plus 3 times negative 1. I'll get plus 3x minus 3 equals to 8x minus 7. Okay, now you can simplify your left side first so that it's easier. Like terms are this negative x plus 3x. Simplify together, I'll get x squared minus 1x plus 3x is plus 2x minus 3 equals to 8x minus 7. Okay, then now I want to get rid of the terms on the right side, so I'll subtract 8x on both sides and add 7 on both sides. I'll get x squared plus 2x minus 3 minus 8x plus 7 equals to 0. Then now I can simplify. Okay, let me align this first. Okay, so now I want to simplify this from here. Okay, I identify your like terms first. 2x and minus 8x. Simplify this to become x squared. 2x minus 8x is minus 6x. Then next one is negative 3 plus 7. Simplify to 7 minus 3, this will be plus 4 equals to 0. Okay, so now my last step is to solve this by the quadratic formula. So follow the same steps, identify your A equals to something, B equals to something, and C equals to something. Find out your A, B, and C from this quadratic expression here. Then write out your quadratic formula, x equals to negative b, you put your whatever b value over here, plus minus b squared minus 4ac. Okay, then solve this yourself. Then next lesson I will check whether you are able to obtain the correct answer for this question. Okay, remember to round off your final answer to 3SF. Okay, and that's the end for this video. So I hope that through this video you are able to know how to apply the quadratic formula. So recap again, you have to first make sure that the right side is equal to 0 first, then identify your A, B, and C. Then you can now write out this expression using your A, B, and C, and then solve the question using your calculator with the correct presentation expected for this question. Okay, so go back and finish up this part by yourself. Then next lesson, I'll check on this part whether you're able to apply what we have done in this video. Okay, that's all for this video.